everyone, I have a really quick and easy baby quilt for you today, so check it out. Okay, I'm really excited about this little baby quilt that I have for you today. To make it, you're going to need one package of 5-inch squares. I used Snow from Kona. You'll also need an additional ½ yard of that fabric. And then you'll need 3/4 of a yard of a medium and a dark. And these are what I went with. This is Parchment and Suede, also by Kona. I also opted to add a few blocks in the quilt behind me using some Cuddle, and I use this beautiful Dazzle Ivory from their Luxe Cuddle, and it has this cute little gold fleck in it. I thought it would just add some texture and fun, which is perfect for babies. So if you want to add just a few blocks to the front, you'll just need a 1/4 yard. I also backed it with Cuddle, and so you would need a little bit more if you go that route. If you opt to use the Cuddle, Cuddle has a one-way stretch, which makes it a little bit difficult if you're piecing. And so I also used some Shape Flex stabilizer that I ironed to the back. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but you'll need some of that as well if you're going to go that route. So let me show you how quick and easy this is to make. It's really fun. So to start off with, this is our block that we're gonna make. And we are going to take a 5-inch square from our pack, and I have that here. And then we're going to take one of our lights, or our medium, and our dark. This is our light. And these measure 4½ inches. So I just cut a 4½ inch strip and subcut those into 4½ inch squares. And so to begin, I have stacked those right on top of one another, and I'm going to cut them in half. Corner to corner, just like so. And then I am going to take my 5-inch square and I'm going to finger press so that I have a little center point on all 4 of the sides. You could take this to the iron if you want, but I just need a little mark on the edge where I know where my center is. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these triangles that I've cut. So I'm going to start with my mediums here. I'll just finger press those, and then I'm going to line those on opposite sides of my 5-inch square. So I have one there and one here, and I'm going to go ahead and sew on both of these sides with a 1/4 inch seam. So let's take this to the machine and sew this down. There's the first side, and then we can flip this around. I'm going to shorten my stitch length a little. There we go. And now we can press these back. There's 1, 2, and we'll bring this back over to our cutting mat. I want to point out, you see these little tabs that hang over on either side. You can trim these off straight if you would like, and I do like to do that. It's totally optional, but it gets rid of some bulk. So I'm going to trim that and do the same on this side. And then I can still see my little mark that I made, but I'm just going to fold that again, line up my little seam there, make sure my finger pressed mark is still in the middle of my square. There we go. And now we'll take our dark triangles that we cut in half. Same thing, finger press there. Lay those right on that line, and you'll see it still hangs over even where we trimmed that off. And we'll do the same thing to the other side. Ta-da! Let's take this to the sewing machine. sure my side is lined up. Have everything where I want it, and then we'll sew down this side as well. There we go. Now we'll give this a press. All right, so there is the basis of most of our quilt. We are going to go ahead and square this up. We want it to be 7 inches. So I'm going to bring this over here, and I just have a big square ruler here, and I am just going to eyeball this. I know all of these points need to be in the middle of my block, so half of 7.5 is, or sorry, half of 7 is 3.5. Didn't mean to confuse you there. So I need the 3.5 mark of my ruler to be in line with all of those points. So that's what I'm looking for right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut these 2 sides. There we go. Oop, get that out of the way. Now we can rotate this, and I can put this right on the 7-inch line of my ruler, still watching that this lines up with the 3.5 mark, and it does. And then we can just trim off this little bit, and it comes out nice and square. And now our main block is done. So I made a few blocks. I actually made 4 in the quilt behind me using this beautiful Luxe Cuddle. And so let me talk a little bit about that stabilizer. So remember, I just ironed the Shape Flex onto the back of my Cuddle. You can see here I just cut a strip, and I did a little bit larger than I needed. So this is a 6-inch strip of stabilizer on the back of my Cuddle, and then I could go through and cut using my ruler, 5-inch strips and subcut those into 5-inch squares. And then from there, it's exactly the same. That Shape Flex just makes it so you don't have any stretch at all, and it gives it a little bit more control as you're sewing. There is some bulk here, obviously, because you have all that nice fluff. And so my best advice for you is to lengthen your stitch length just a little bit. If you usually use a 2.5, maybe go up to a 3 or a 3.5. And then you don't want to iron this because this is synthetic fibers. So you just really have to take your time and finger press your seams back in between. And then you just square it up at the end, just like we did with our regular block, and it is ready to go. So the magic in this quilt is actually how you set it, and it offsets by creating these little half blocks. It's not actually a half block because of our seam allowance. So from that extra fabric that you had, you're going to cut some 7-inch strips and subcut those into 3 3/3. Sorry, want to make sure I say that right. So 3 3/4 by 7 inches. And then we are going to do basically the same idea, but I have my 3 3/4 inch squares of both my medium and my dark. And so we're essentially making a flying geese unit now. The one thing that you need to keep in mind is however your blocks are going to be laid out in your quilt, which in my case, that means my medium is up and to the right, you need to make sure these half units are made the exact same way. So if you rotate these and you have your blocks laid out this way, then your top would need to be your dark. Does that make sense? But we're going to make sure it's this way. So I'm going to start by laying my 3 3/4 inch medium square, and we are going to sew point to point this direction. So let's do that first. And I'm just using my diagonal seam tape. You could totally mark these if you wanted to, or press a line. There we go. Just use my scissors to trim that. Just like so, and then we can iron this back. And then I'll go ahead and grab that darker color now. Set this on the opposite side, and we're going to sew point to point, just the same. There we go. trim off our excess there. And press it back. There is our half block. That is it. Really, this quilt is so simple. And so now for the layout, you are going to have your first row start with a half block, and all of your blocks are just going to sit exactly the same. And then when you come in on the next row, it's going to start with a whole block, and then you can see it would end, this will flip, with a half block. And then you start to see this tumbling block shape appear, which is really fun because typically when you're creating a tumbling block pattern, you need either a rhombus or you have Y-seams, and you don't have either of that with this option. So it's just really quick and easy. It gives you a perfect little baby quilt that ends up 36 by 39. I hope you'll give it a shot, and I hope you will try adding a little bit of that Cuddle in there for some great texture that babies love. So I will see you next time on At Home with Misty. Hey everyone, it's Misty. Thanks for watching At Home. If you aren't already a part of our Missouri Star family, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you want a notification every time we release a new video. I'll see you next Monday on the newest episode of At Home.